As we mentioned earlier, today is Resurrection Sunday. We remember the greatest event in the history of mankind, that Christ rose from the dead, and because of this, the problem of death has been resolved. Christ has shown us that he has mastery over death, and that the gates of Hades, they can't prevail against him, therefore they won't be able to prevail against us.
Amen.
Christ's resurrection is the first resurrection of many resurrections, our own resurrections. And even in our own resurrections, they are varied. There are two kinds of resurrections that we participate in. The second kind is the one we think about often. It's the final resurrection of all things, where all of Christ's enemies will be defeated and Christ will come back personally to defeat death and to raise everybody and to give his great white throne judgment at the end of time. This is the second resurrection. But there's a first resurrection. And this resurrection, the first resurrection from the dead, you have already experienced. You are experiencing. This is the resurrection you experience in the waters of baptism through faith. You have died with Christ, and you have been risen with Christ. This is the first resurrection. St. John in his Apocalypse, he says, "Blessed are those who partake in the first resurrection." He says, because they are made priests of God and they rule with Christ. That is you. That is you by virtue of your baptism and by faith in God. St. Paul in his letters to the Romans, he says that in the first resurrection, we are dead to sin and alive to Christ. And that because we've been buried with Christ in his death, we are also at the same time resurrected with Christ in his new life. And that because we are now saints of the first resurrection, we don't let sin reign in our mortal bodies, but we let the Spirit reign in our mortal bodies. So as members of the first resurrection, we can think of this as being signs of the world to come to the world. We are signs of what the final resurrection is. We are this proleptic version of the resurrection. And so we live as people of both of those resurrections. This reminds us of our need to confess.